Good morning, everybody, and a very, very warm welcome to the 22nd Visiting Arts International Producers Breakfast at the Edinburgh International Festival. This year, Visiting Arts is celebrating its 40th anniversary, so this is a very, very special event, and you will notice already a change. There's a change of venue, a change of format, and a change of focus. But underneath it all, we have enormous support from the Edinburgh International Festival, particularly in this venue, and also from Creative Scotland. So the theme of this talk today is contemporary change, whatever that means. And we have a wonderful panel who I will introduce later, but I'm going to be very brief because you will have had their biographies and you will get follow-up. So today is not a day for a lot of extraneous bits of information. You can find the information online. We're going to have short, snappy discussion. We're going to have a discussion now and then the networking, which is a change in format, and the breakfast that you can see. And then the other change is we're going to have a glass of Bucks Fizz to toast the next 40 years. So I hope you'll stay for that. That's the format and that's the change. And the bit that's established is that we're really lucky to have the director of the Edinburgh International Festival to open this event and also to tell you something about the festival from his point of view. So can I first introduce Fergus Linehan, Artistic Director of the Edinburgh International Festival. Thank you.
Thank you very much and good morning, everybody. So this is always a curious one for me because we're always right in the middle of the festival, and so to draw any conclusions is dangerous. So it's as much as anything just some notes from the field and some observations as we go through. And I know that a lot of what we're talking about is trying to get a sense of where we are in a rapidly changing world and what direction we might be going in. So I think a few things have become apparent, and I'm not just speaking for our festival, I'm speaking across all of the festivals. I mean, as has been well said, it's the 70th anniversary of ourselves, the Fringe and the Film Festival. And I think, again, it's been well treaded, but it's probably worth noting those founding principles of the festival, which was that this wasn't set up as a celebration of theatre like Avignon or film like Cannes or even visual arts like Venice. It was set up as a platform to encourage cultural communication and collaboration. And that gave it a big advantage in terms of, people often ask, why did it grow into what it grew? And because it had that very broad principle, many different people could come and set up their stalls, whether it's on the Fringe or the Book Festival, or indeed the two. Underneath that banner, I think all kind of forms of arts and entertainment found a place. So I think what's been very interesting for us in this year has been revisiting those principles. And if I was to be honest, 2 years ago when we thought about this, we thought no one's really going to be interested in these particular principles. They sound, the platform of the human spirit and all of these things, they sound quite archaic. But as we approached, obviously there was a kind of tsunami of events which made them feel incredibly relevant. And so we arrived at the anniversary with the issues that are the principles at the forefront of everyone's mind. And so the anniversary for us has been very important institutionally, I think, in terms of really understanding our history. I think one of the things that happens at 70 is you begin to move out of living memory, and that's quite an interesting moment because you're quite casual about these things until you realize that the people who were there are actually all dying. And so we began a kind of an archiving project and realized that as an organization we needed to understand and document exactly what happened in those early years. But I think that was very good for us as well, because I think we realized as well that it does inform an awful lot of what we do today. Last night in the Usher Hall we had a concert with the Mariinsky Orchestra from St. Petersburg and the Royal Scottish National Orchestra, our national orchestra here, performing a work by Dmitri Shostakovich, where both orchestras came together, and the piece it got its Western premiere here. So the very act of bringing those two orchestras together to do a piece, and there was an evening of Shostakovich and Benjamin Britten, both of whom met here at the festival, and so celebrating that and bringing those together is a very explicit way of doing it. But I think that we're realizing that increasingly this has become a platform for discussion. And I would say one of the things I've noticed in recent years is how much Edinburgh has become a meeting place. I mean, it always was, but I think even more so. I think the need for us to gather and to talk has become more and more pronounced. I think the other big thing, which is obvious to anyone who's part of the discussions or seeing a lot of work, is this question of identity. And it's very apt that it's here because we've been through, since I arrived, we've been through two referenda which specifically asked questions of our identity, both within Scotland, within the UK, and within Europe and the world. And I think that has been a very, very interesting discussion. I think it's interesting that the Fringe this year put a lot of its communication and marketing into this idea of kind of the countercultural, and this question of what the countercultural is. And obviously we're in a situation now where the alt-right regards itself as countercultural and has kind of appropriated a lot of the language of kind of progressive politics. So you can see this searching for who we are and what the other is. And so I think everyone wants to stick it to the man at the moment, but nobody's quite sure who the man is. So that's I think that question of defining yourself in opposition to something, I think, has been a recurring theme. And of course, that throws back the question, which is, well, what is it that you stand for? And looking around for that question of, rather than being against something, what exactly you stand for and what it is that you're putting forward. And I think that's something which we've seen a lot of. I think we've seen a lot of splintering of politics. I've never been through a year with so much kind of political interest. We've had enormous interest from ambassadors from around the world, from Westminster, from the Scottish government, from Edinburgh itself. And it's very interesting because I think it means that the sort of discussions that we're having are moving right into the centre of political life. They haven't found any form or money yet, it has to be said, but they are there. We've had this sort of movement from the point at the Conservative Party conference where the Prime Minister said, if you believe you're a citizen of the world, you're a citizen of nowhere, to the point where now there's this huge discussion about what global Britain is, and this redefinition of Britain. And I think that artists usually aren't as explicit as that, but I think there's a big discussion about what home is. And certainly, as an EU national living in Scotland, that's a very interesting discussion. And of course, artists have been much more nuanced in that. It's much more than whether or not you've got permission to work. It's a question of whether what you feel is who are the people of a place, and whether we're Europeans living here or whether we are Scottish people or British people living here. And I think we've seen that kind of right across the piece. There's a few just other practical considerations, I think. I think that this question of what happened in terms of funding over the past 8 years is very, very important, because we are now, we'll see what Brexit has to say about it, but we are coming to the end of a recession. And right across Europe and across the world, indeed, everyone suffered cuts in almost every area of their activity. But as we come out of that, there's going to be a question as to whether that was just a reality of the public finances or whether it was an actual philosophical shift. And it's going to be a very important moment, I think, as public finances start to recover, where those arguments sit and whether people say, well, that is now the waterline, or whether or not there's an argument to reinstate it. And if it gets reinstated, whether it's going to get reinstated in a very different way, I suspect it is. I suspect there's going to be a broader question in relation to the arts which connects into certain priorities of government, which are not purely to do with the cultural sector. I believe that there's going to be a wider conversation of the arts in the context of creative industries, and we haven't really figured that out yet, but I think it's going to be absolutely critical. amazed. We have a function here later on with the Creative Industries Federation, and the degree of political attention the arts get when they're sitting beside publishers and software developers is quite extraordinary. But how we begin to kind of configure ourselves within that is going to be very important. On a slightly less kind of specific area, I think that the whole area of we all believe in collaboration and we all believe in working together, but what that actually means is going to be very important. I think that there is a requirement for a multiplicity of voices in what I do, the curation process. But how that manifests itself is going to be very interesting. I do believe that the idea of the single individual who has a sort of a gladiatorial view to the selection of a program is coming to an end, and there is going to have to be a much wider discussion as to how we come to that. I mean, any of you who really do collaboration knows it's incredibly difficult and incredibly messy, and so how we manage through that. But certainly I think that I've noticed, particularly this year, that really the only way to work at the moment is by putting different organizations, perhaps with different objectives together, and coming up with a sort of shared outcome. We had a very interesting project with the British Council this year and BBC Arts with that in mind. I think there are other things. I think we're seeing probably the very end of critical analysis existing within the mainstream media, and it's a curious kind of development, because it's not really affecting our audiences per se, but it is affecting the degree to which the general public has access to analysis, which I think is having something of an effect on the work. Obviously, there are all sorts of voices coming out online, but whether or not that means that the commentary around what we do is being ghettoized into the interested few, and not spreading out into the broader public, I think may have an effect down the line. I shan't go on much longer, but I just wanted to sort of touch upon a few of those. It's wonderful to see you all. You're very, very welcome to the Hub. I know today's a very important day, and many happy birthday and many happy regards to all of you. And I hope I will get a chance to see some of you a little later on. Obviously, this is not the best time for us, but it's wonderful you're all here, and thanks very much for coming. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Very good, and we'll be picking up on a couple of those ideas, particularly about the watermark for funding and new models, and also the creative industries. And I should add that Visiting Arts has a big event in October where the creative industries and arts will come together in Cardiff, called Kickstart Cardiff, and there's some information about it outside. We're very excited about that. Now I'd like to invite Laura Carmichael Lewis? Cameron Lewis. I knew I'd got that wrong. I'm so sorry. We had that discussion. From Creative Scotland, who've been enormous supporters of us and continue to support us. So, Laura.
Tapelev. Matin va, Charshin, is Misha Laura Cameron Lewis, she dansa, Kianar dansa le Alaba Cruchel hanum, agus ha e ho mirveloch, Jov avi Kurfalche Orav and Jew. My name is Laura Cameron Lewis. I'm the head of dance at Creative Scotland. And that was a very warm Scots Gaelic welcome to all of our international friends here today. Thank you very much for being with us. It's rare to hear one of our native languages in this kind of context, but so important. It's one of the unique things that we share with you and reflects back the wonderful and very important sharing that we experience from you as you bring aspects of your culture and your lives to us here today. So thank you all for that. So as I say, I'm here on behalf of Creative Scotland, and we are delighted that you have chosen to join us here to celebrate the Edinburgh Festivals and participate in making this the world's leading hothouse of artistic discovery, collaboration, and creative networking. Every year, exceptional artists bring to work work to Edinburgh, which not only reflects on the world issues, but also reminds us of the healing power of art and how it can provide balance in our lives, wherever we come from, whatever our entry point to the arts. All over Scotland, artists and creative people transform lives daily through their work, giving people the chance to express themselves in many and different types of ways. So it's really important for Creative Scotland to support the Edinburgh International Festival, the Edinburgh Festival Fringe, the Edinburgh International Book Festival, the Edinburgh Art Festival, Festivals Edinburgh, and of course today, Visiting Arts, who are celebrating their 40th year. Happy birthday, Visiting Arts.
Thank you.
As we heard so eloquently from Fergus there, the spirit of internationalism is so vital right now. It really can't be underestimated. And that underpins everything that the Edinburgh Festivals, and indeed culture in Scotland, is all about. Crucially, the Edinburgh Festivals provide a valuable platform for Scotland's artistic talent and a meeting point for artistic talent from fabulous artists all over the world. So our international friends gathered here during August together provides a unique platform for all of us artists, international producers, to share ideas. And we are proud to see that exchange growing. And that Scotland is regarded as a significant place within the arts internationally by you, by artists, producers, the media, and travelling audiences. Working internationally is a really important part of what we do to ensure that Scotland remains a successful and distinctive creative nation connected to the world. Arts and culture transcend borders and bring people together from across the globe, and we'll continue to do everything that we can to support our vibrant arts, screen and creative industries to make and sustain fruitful, positive international relationships across Europe and beyond. So because artistic and creative endeavour are central to shaping a civilised society, we want to invest and continue to support a world where increasingly we use the arts to explore and find ways through the kind of trauma and conflict that's visible in every part of our lives, and creativity plays a fundamentally important role in doing that. It encourages us to dream. It gives us permission to imagine different ways of doing things, and it inspires hope. So it is vital to us that you are here to collaborate with each other and with Scotland's artistic community and wider arts-going audience. And we wish you an incredible and stimulating experience with us here, and hope you take that with you wherever you go.
Thank you,
Alyssa.
Thank you very much, Laura. And I will say in Welsh, diolch yn fawr iawn I chi. So we have another language of the UK. So now I'd like to introduce the panel, and this is also your opportunity to engage. We have Alyssa from Trinidad and the New Fire Festival, Rama from Indonesia, and the Seni Sini Sani event, Michelle from Greenwich and Docklands Festival, and Chad from the Festival of Arts and Ideas. And I'm going to ask them very briefly, about 5 minutes, to give a stimulus, to say what is it about their festival that's different. We heard Fergus talk about changes in funding. Many of these people have no public funding or rely on different models. So what is it about your festival that you think is different, new, contemporary, and looking forward? Alyssa.
Thank you so much. It is amazing to be here on this 40th birthday. You know, for many people, 40 is a significant anniversary when you look back on what has gone and make plans for what is going to happen. So I'm very, very pleased to be here as the... Now, I need to check my title. I will tell you why. This is one of the innovative things we're doing. I'm the Global Partnerships Coordinator for the New Fire Festival. The New Fire Festival is a tiny festival in a tiny place that is 2 years old. Yeah? But fires start from sparks. If we It's supposed to be a light discussion, so let's get into some Greek mythology. This is a theater crowd, so if I say, tell me about Prometheus, people say, he was chained to a rock because he stole fire. But why was Zeus angry with Prometheus? Zeus had a choice, and the choice was a precedent-setting decision. So 2 offerings were placed in front of him. One was bones wrapped in glistening fat, is the quote. And the other was choice beef in a stomach. So you have something that appears to be really palatable, but not so great. And then you have something that doesn't look so wonderful, but is really the choice cuts. And Zeus chose the shiny-looking thing. Yes? And then he was angry. And this is the reason Prometheus was punished. Yeah? Prometheus stole fire to bring to humans. If you think of industry, if you think of homes, you need fire to catalyze things. There was an eclipse a few days ago, and we're modern humans, but if you stand in the path of an eclipse and look at the sun go out, there's a primordial fear that it will never come back. Light and heat are so crucial to us being. Yeah. So the New Fire Festival, as I said, is 2 years old. In our second year, we had 1,800 guests. Trinidad has the population 1.3 million, 8 miles from the coast of Venezuela in South America. We speak English, but Trinidadians are strange that way. The lingua franca of Trinidad was French while we were ruled by the Spanish. That is typical Trinidad. And Trinidad, so we contrary. That is why Scots people make excellent Trinidadians. I have that on good authority. So, 2 years old, and we aim to be a catalyst for sustainable, restorative, and regenerative development in the Caribbean. Festival, you say, that's kind of heavy stuff. But, people talked about the festival as being magical. And sometimes life can be really hard, and people go to festivals to experience something different. So the activities we have: overnight camping, live music, artisan market, children's activities, health and wellness demos, discussion and workshop, nutritious, locally sourced foods. And the main components of the festival are an outdoor concert experience, a showcase for sustainable small enterprises, locally made and sustainable living, and a fun outdoor experience including camping. Now, camping, innovative, Trinidadians don't camp. Not in Trinidad. If we go abroad, we might camp, but we do not, except for people in the army and people who go trekking. Trinidad is rainforest. Trinidad is not a tropical island. When the Spaniards got there, they arrived on the coast and got yellow fever and left. They did. It was not. We're not a coral island, so those pretty picturesque beaches are not what we have. Part of of Trinidad's burden is its fecundity. Between, I think, 1999 and 2007, it is estimated that we squandered 77 billion with a B US dollars. 1.3 million people. I'm going to wrap up now. Yes, so the New Fire Festival is a catalyst for positive societal change in the Caribbean and the Global South. We focus on sustainable community development, harnessing the potential of our people, being culturally inclusive, confident, resilient, and prosperous, and working in 2017, which is the year of sustainable tourism development, according to the UN, to achieve some of the UN's goals, and we can go into that as we talk further, but if you have your calendars out, the weekend before Easter in Trinidad, we would like to see all of you there.
Thank you. Lovely.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. We get a flavour, sustainability. So Rama, tell us a little bit about Indonesia. This isn't a festival, but you're really doing exciting things with arts and culture. To do what? What is your...
First of all, it's a pleasure to be here. This is my first time in the Visiting Arts meeting. And I didn't expect to be in the stage with a clip-on mic, so I'm quite nervous. I have a very tiny collective of producers and managers in their sector, focusing on international collaboration and exchange. For us, undertaking international project is not only about logistics and finance, but more than that, it's about creating a cross-cultural engagement and understanding, and also bridging communication between people from 2 or 3 different worlds. To give you background, Indonesia is a very big country, maybe the hugest archipelago in the world, comprises 17,000 islands with more than 1,000 ethnicities, cultural and languages. That means diversity and differences are part of our life. We encounter it on a daily basis. But when it comes to dealing with people from other countries, many Indonesians are just not getting there. Like something is missing. That's why we try to take that role to bridging the communication or collaboration. We don't represent a particular artist or festival. We partner with them on a project basis. That is usually customized. It can be a new production, a series of programs. It could be a short or longer term project, or it could be other way. We try to give bigger impact to the community both ways. To give you example, our participation in collaboration between the UK and Indonesia in creative economy sector. We took part, it was started in 2013 when we took part of producing showcase of Indonesian performing arts and music. Okay. We took part in producing Indonesian performing arts and music showcase in Jakarta, where we also invited international presenters. Some of them was presenters from the UK, supported by the British Council. From there, along with the UK presenters who are interested to program Indonesian companies or Indonesian contemporary work, we produce a UK national tour, we call it. It's a touring festival across the UK for 2 months in 2015. So it took 2 years for us to cook together. It was started in the French. And then we went over to London, to Glasgow, to Cardiff. It was a multi-partnership production between my tiny collective, Indonesian government, which was represented by the Agency of Creative Economy and Ministry of Culture, and also the British Council, one of the biggest support. Cryptic from Glasgow, South Bank Centre in London, and Wales Millennium Centre in Cardiff. The year after, it was a 2 months long tour with various programs. The year after, we did the other way around. We invited 2 British companies to come to Indonesia, where those 2 companies, we met, one in Edinburgh and one is in Glasgow. We created a particular program for each company in Indonesia. We were touring in several cities with a very specific program for each company. So the cooperation is continuing until now between 2 countries, and we liaise every people along the way.
Thank you very much. Thank you. So there's a great need for an outward-looking, collaborative, international collaboration from Indonesia, and we look forward to seeing more of it. Michelle, tell us about Greenwich. It's outdoors and it rains.
Indeed. Morning, everybody. So, yes, a very brief introduction to Greenwich and Docklands International Festival, GDIF, as we call it. It's a large festival of outdoor arts, of all art forms, that attracts about 100,000 people a year to around 200 performances crammed into a very hectic 17-day period in the summer. Outdoors is really our sort of DNA of what we do, so we're programming and presenting and commissioning and producing work that happens in urban environments and public spaces across the southeast and east of London. It's a free festival, or at least it's possible to see everything that is presented at the festival for free. We went through the start of a rebrand this year, and we were delighted when our very clever designer discovered that hidden in the words something different are our own initials, GDIF. So as well as giving him a little round of applause, we've sort of taken that as a bit of a guiding principle, I suppose, for the work that we do in the years ahead. I guess it's both an invitation to audiences to do something different and to try something different, and it's also a challenge and provocation to us and the artists we work with to dare to be something different and offer something different in the conversation that we hope takes place around the festival events. So I suppose today I'm really speaking from the perspective of outdoor festivals, which I guess might be a little bit different to some of the people here. It's worth saying, I think, that GDIF is very much our flagship event, but it is just one of the projects that we undertake. I think increasingly we think of ourselves as an outdoor arts producer rather than just a festival. Other projects that we undertake during the year include curating and delivering the Liberty Festival on behalf of the Mayor of London at the GLA, which is a one-day celebration of performance work by deaf and disabled artists that happens at the Olympic Park. We manage a consortium called Global Streets, which is about presenting the very best international outdoor performing arts in 10 towns and cities around the UK in areas of low cultural engagement. And I suppose the sort of season for that takes place all the way through up until November. So that's really a sort of year-round collaborative project. And we're also one of the lead delivery partners on the Woolwich Cultural Destinations programme, which is an Arts Council-funded programme to use a kind of collaboration between arts and culture and tourism to look at, I guess, repositioning certain destinations or certain locations as destinations with visitor and local appeal. So I suppose I say that because I think it's indicative of a pattern of year-round working, which I think is an increasing trend or priority for many festivals, of course not at all just us. Some of that I think is about a desire and an imperative to connect more meaningfully with audiences all year round rather than just popping up on their radar for a few weeks at a time. Some of it, of course, is about operating a resilient business model, which particularly thinking about outdoor arts and the I guess, preeminent focus around providing free access to arts and culture, it's often that year-round working that helps make sense of a business model to protect that priority. There are many examples of year-round working or perhaps mixed model working in the outdoor arts sector. It's worth giving a sort of name check, for example, to Norfolk and Norwich Festival that also delivers the Norfolk and Norwich Bridge project, to Sea Change Arch, which, for example, both delivers the Out There Festival in Great Yarmouth, also has the Drill Hall now as a artist development and creation centre, and with a year-round programme of work. Hat Fair, a festival of outdoor arts in Winchester, which is part of the same organisation as Theatre Royal in Winchester, and similarly Appetite Stoke, which buddies up with the New Vic in Stoke. So there's increasingly a sense of how is the outdoor sector and the indoor and theatre sector, or different parts of our cultural sector, sort of collaborating and talking with each other and making sense of our offer to audiences all year round. I think there's an increasing focus on what I'm sort of loosely calling contextualization in festivals. Now, of course, some of that is just bread and butter and what we should be doing anyway and always have done, but I think there's something about the care of how performances are rooted and cited in festival environments that I think feels like a real priority at the moment, thinking about how can... It's almost contradictory, isn't it, the idea of that very hectic festival environment where really each and every individual show and each and every individual audience member you want to take enormous care of and make sure that that is the best encounter it could possibly be. So although in a sense that's what festivals have always done, I think there's something of an increasing care around that idea, which I think connects to perhaps an increasing priority around the way we enable and deliver participation projects, and thinking about longer-term audience engagement activity. I think we're more and more interested in how that connection with both audiences and participants in our festivals can last longer and be more meaningful than the few days or weeks of the festival. Related to that, something we want to be thinking about a lot in the next few years is around artist development. I think there's a real challenge to festivals about what is a festival role in supporting artists really well. I think there are loads of examples that we will all know in, for example, the theatre sector, or perhaps building-based art forms of artistic development schemes and talent support that really enable artists to flourish, that really help diversify the artists who are working in the sector. And I think there can be a real challenge for festivals in how we do that well. So I think we want to really embrace that challenge and think about what our responsibility is to artists and to diversifying the artists that are making work for festivals. One of the ways in which we already do that is by working in collaboration with a consortium of many other outdoor festivals, a consortium called Without Walls, which is an Arts Council-funded initiative that jointly invests in and co-commissions and then tours new and groundbreaking work, often from artists who perhaps haven't made work in the outdoors before or might be new and emerging. So that's about trying to, I guess, diversify the work that's available. A particular theme that I think we feel is really live in the outdoor sector is this idea about public space being increasingly encroached upon by all sorts of forces. Sounds fairly Star Trek, doesn't it? But I think there's the spaces that are available for public sharing of ideas and the congregation of public around arts and culture feels increasingly under pressure. I think both geographically, as the physical space that is available for that to happen gets bought or developed or has all sorts of other restrictions put on it. And as the practicalities of that, I think, get harder and harder, I think there's something quite important that perhaps signals might need protecting there. So I think that idea of what is our responsibility to help audiences, I guess, protect and govern and steward their own sense of their public space that belongs to all of us. And it feels like there's an important role for festivals within that that extends beyond arts and culture, that feels like it's a sort of civic imperative. The final challenge I wanted to touch on, which is something that we will be thinking about particularly, is around theatre and how theatre can work at its best in outdoor environments. I think it's obviously there are all sorts of wonderful examples of art forms across all different genres which work fantastically in outdoors, but something we'd really like to work with artists to develop over the next few years is how theatre that perhaps might be narrative-driven or dramaturgically focused can also really find really thrilling and exciting contexts outdoors to work as well. That perhaps is a very specific priority for us, but there might be other people in the room who share it. I'm aware that sounds like an awful lot of challenges as my thoughts for the future. So I thought I'd better end with a couple of opportunities that I think there are. I think outdoor arts in particular is really proud and excited to boast growing audiences which reflect increasingly the contemporary demographics of the UK, and I think outdoor arts is able to excel at that. And I think that's increasingly becoming, therefore, an asset that other areas of the cultural sector, or indeed other sectors beyond the arts, recognise. And I think that becomes one of those prompts for the collaboration that Fergus spoke about earlier. And I think there's a real growing appetite for partnership working, despite all the challenges and messiness of it, whether that's with heritage organisations or science organisations or libraries or retail sector or all sorts. And I think that feels like that's full of potential. And I think the most important, I suppose, beacon is this idea of transformation. I think when we're in an arts festival like this, we think and we talk about the idea of transformation all the time. I think what we feel really excited about in the outdoor sector is that that can be both literal and metaphorical. It can both be the sort of intangible transformation of communities that we all think about and the transformation of ideas, but also in the outdoor arts sector, that's made very real and very literal, literally transforming streets and spaces and in turn memories and communities. So I think that feels like, an optimistic place.
Thank you very much. A lot of very good thoughts there that we'll pick up, and I hope you'll pick up on too. But finally, I want to bring in Chad. Arts and ideas, what's that about, and where did that come from, and where is it going?
Okay, so the International Festival of Arts and Ideas is in New Haven, Connecticut, about an hour and a half north of New York City, about 2 hours south of Boston on the coast. So that gives you an idea of where we are located with 7 universities in our city. There's no question that there is tremendous culture available to us most of the year. The festival was founded, though, 22 years ago because in June, there was no reason to stay in New Haven. And so our 3 founders came together to really create an opportunity for people to come together in New Haven and founded the festival off of the Edinburgh model, a reason to bring people together to celebrate and to experience some of the best arts and culture from around the world. We talk about the festival as a festival of arts and ideas, and it's really that ampersand, the and part of how the arts and the ideas come together as one to make us who we are and who we are as a city of New Haven. Much like GDIF, much like GDIF, we are a 17-day festival, or around that time period. We bring or welcome in about 100,000 people to New Haven, and the city becomes our stage. We don't have our own space, so we inhabit the city green, where we have large-scale outdoor concerts and performances, to a number of theaters around the city. I think what's been great for me this morning is to hear that our challenges, that we're not alone. That I look across this room and see so many friends and hear the stories that we heard today and understand that the challenges that we're faced with are challenges that we're all faced with here in this business. And it's really about how do we stay relevant for the work that we're doing, how do we stay relevant in our community to the artists that we're serving and to the audiences that we're serving from abroad. And that's something that we work very hard at. We work hard at it, and we use these challenges to our advantage by having things like our Festival Fellowship Program, where we bring in 12 to 15 high school students, 15 and 16-year-olds from the greater New Haven area. These kids are not the kids that were born and their parents said, "You're going to Yale." These are kids that had grown up in some pretty tough households that are going to go to Yale because they're extremely bright, and they're kids that we learn from over and over again. They spend a semester with us, they get college credit, learning about how we make a festival, but really learning on why we make a festival, and that's to bring people together. They learn that the work that we do in our city makes their city better, and that they want to make their city better with us. And that program has been going on for 7 years now, and as I said, these kids, they walk out of our program at 16 years of age with 4 credits of college credit, and the experience that they had is vital to them, but it's really what they do after that, where they go on and they become the leaders of our city, and actually 2 of them work for us now at the festival. It's created this really nice workforce development program. We host pop-up festivals where we bring our festival, really, we bring the resources of our festival to the communities within New Haven where they have their own festivals, and that's how we get things kicked off. And these neighborhoods really celebrate what happens in their neighborhoods prior to our festival every year. And then they come and join us on our festival stages 3 weeks later or a month later to help us make the larger festival. But it is this relevant, so whether it be commissioning new work or providing people the opportunity to see new work. Probably the biggest thing that we learned this year is maintaining that place of it being a safe place for people to share thoughts. I don't know if any of you heard, but we had this election in November in the United States, and it's really created a hard time for many of us in the United States. A time where people aren't sure that it's okay to share your thoughts unless you're doing it on Twitter at 4 a.m. And so our Ideas events this year really became a place where people wanted to be able to hear not only what some of the greatest thinkers are saying, but then share their thoughts about how they can be part and relevant to a community. These Ideas events that in the last couple of years we had seen attendance kind of drop away. This year we saw record attendance come through where not only were all of the seats filled for people to hear these thoughts and happenings going on, but then our overflow seating and record viewing on our live stream was happening because people really needed that place, that safe place to come together, to hear and to share what it means to be relevant in their community. And that's really where we are with the Festival of Arts and Ideas.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So now it's over to you. And we've had some very interesting ideas here, picking up on Fergus's ideas too, but starting with the notion of public space and the defense of public space, reappropriation of space, and creating a safe space for ideas, looking at literal and figurative transformation of neighborhoods and people and giving that memory, looking at shared experiences, big outdoor festivals. I'm minded of the 40,000 people that came to Cardiff for the City of the Imagination by the National Theatre of Wales. 40,000 people experiencing free outdoors events, and that's growing. And picking up on the notion of the curator, as Fergus did, the gladiatorial, you're in or you're out. Festivals used to be, I'm putting on my show. You call it contextualization, other people call it democratization of the curatorial process. Another big idea that's going forward. And then touching on challenging people. Mm-hmm. We don't go in tents in Trinidad. Oh, yes, we do. And money. Where's it coming from and how does it work? I'm interested in your entrepreneurial model, the business model that says we now need a bridge. We need to not just have the public money for the show, we need to create the funds to support that. So there's 4 or 5 big ideas of the future. So over to you, you're the ones that have the questions and the answers. I would suggest, because I know that really what you want to do is have coffee, breakfast, network, so I suggest we limit this to 4 or 5 questions from the floor and then go and have fun, and don't forget the Bucks Fizz at the end. So, questions from the floor? Ideas?
Everyone wants the Bucks Fizz, I think.
Nasli. Thank you. You can shout, I know, but do have a microphone.
Thank you very much for the microphone. I'm very interested to hear from the speakers and certainly from other people in this room. When you think about making your welcome, what are the things that you consider in how you welcome people? Laura gave us a gorgeous welcome in Gaelic, and there was many other things she did as well. But I'd be interested to know, what are the principles around your welcome?
Very good. Who would like to kick off on that? Rama?
In terms of, at least in terms of languages, in Indonesia, we have one common language, Bahasa Indonesia. We say in a very specific context. For instance, this morning, we call it Selamat Pagi, but Indonesia is also a country with the biggest Muslim population. So whether we are Muslim or not, we usually also greet Assalamualaikum. So we say Assalamualaikum and Selamat Pagi.
And what are your principles of welcome?
The entire festival experience, our festival is also outdoor. And there's a sense of...
No, it's only Rama. Oh, that's like this. That's fine. Sorry.
It's fine.
Carry on.
Yeah, we're mic'd. You know, we're all stage people, you know. It's fine.
Okay.
So there's a sense of leaving the everyday and journeying to somewhere different. The festivals are held in curated outdoor spaces. So people have, I think one was a converted citrus plantation and one is, used to be primary rainforest, but is attached to a part of a cocoa estate. So when people enter, there is a huge sign hand-painted because our festival, we aim to be zero waste. So the sign is painted by volunteers. We have, I think, 85 volunteers and volunteer coordinators. But there's a huge bamboo arch, and when you get the materials, you'll see it, and it says New Fire. So there's this sense of I'm going into a special place. And that sense of expectation and everybody being there to welcome you is what led to people in the first year just saying the festival was magic. It was magic. It was magical. And that idea of being welcomed into a safe space, that is a different space, that is a space of opportunity, I think brings the sense of welcoming.
Thank you.
There's I'd like to pay credit to Coney Theatre Company, who many of you, I'm sure, will know. Tassos Stevens, their director, says that a show begins from the minute an audience member hears about it, and it ends the minute the audience member stops thinking about it. And I'd like to think that we could borrow that principle, that concept, that experience, and use that to inform how we think about everything from how we make the invitation to audiences to be part of and share in what we do. I think it's really important that we're not inviting them to come to something we are doing to them or for them or at them, but it's very much about a spirit of invitation, I suppose, that I'd like to think might run through everything we do, from everything from the spirit of the volunteers, but to, the minute they hear about us to the minute they stop thinking about us, and hopefully that gap between the two each year gets smaller and smaller.
Lovely, thank you very much. Any other questions? I was wondering whether Pippa can be brought in from Australia. I can see her there on Skype. Because in terms of welcome, I am aware of how Australian companies welcome their people and pay homage to the land. Have you got anything to say about that as a welcome? It might not work.
Or do you need... Oh, you've got that.
Can you hear me? Is this going to work? Yeah. Yes. Yeah. Awesome. Hello, everyone. I want to just say before I answer that question that I'm here via Skype because I want to raise awareness about the climate crisis and made a very firm decision this year not to come to Edinburgh and spend that carbon. So I just want you to consider that. In terms of acknowledgement, in Australia we acknowledge the traditional owners of the land on which we're gathered. Of course, Australia is fairly monocultural from a white invader's perspective, but from an Indigenous perspective, there are over 300 languages and 300 land councils, which many people don't know about. So it's become very customary to acknowledge the traditional owners, and if there's an official event, then you're welcomed by traditional owners, and it's a very special thing because the land is obviously an essential part of their culture.
Thank you very much. That's another important elements. So celebration, magic, and respect. Are there any other questions? Or there's one over there. Lovely, thank you. Please do put your hand up immediately, because otherwise we're just going to go and have breakfast, coffee, and drinks. So one more question.
Okay. I was quite interested in the diversity about what you're talking about, not just in scale of your festivals, but also, and not just about place, culture, and geography, but urban, rural.
Yeah.
So I actually run a rural music festival, but I have also worked within urban festival contexts, and I find that often with, especially venue-based festivals, the urban is very much favoured, and in terms of ideas, often it's all about the urban context, and obviously urbanisation is one of the huge shifts in people that's happening, is that people are moving from the rural into cities. And I just wondered across, if you could say a little bit about how your festivals, well, some of them are obviously very urban and some maybe more rural, how they maybe address those issues, or if those issues have even come up for you within your festivals?
I don't know, this is a question particularly for Indonesia, because of it, I don't know what's rural and what's urban in Indonesia. You have big differences, don't you? So are there festivals particularly in rural areas?
Yeah. Does it work? The type of festivals in every places or every city in Indonesia is different. In Jakarta, the capital city, it's very modern, contemporary, and managed by a very professional organization or venue. Another example, in a very totally different space, there is an interesting festival initiated by villagers live in an area surrounded by 5 mountains in central Java. The festival called 5 Mountains Festival. It used to be a traditional performing arts activity for villagers, so no professional artist at all, initiated by the leader of the community, which then gradually became a festival that programmed artists from other cities, along with performances by villagers. One of the most interesting part of the festival is that the villagers are not only performing, but they also taking part as the host. They decorate the village, the so-called venue. It's an outdoor space without any solid infrastructure. They also provide their houses for artists and visitors. Also, they cook in a temporary common kitchen for anyone visiting the festival. So we have that extremely different events. There is also another festival in other city that is trying to be contextual in the city, where they engage street trader in the street with all stalls and cars and etc.
Thank you. I know one of the challenges I've running a rural festival is how to incorporate the contemporary, so it's not only a festival about traditional arts and so on. There's one more quick question, and then I'm going to call an end to it and say, please network and ask the questions outside of this. Judith, quickly.
Did you hear that? If you want to talk to Pippa again tomorrow, we're having a discussion at the Centre for Innovation, Carbon Innovation, where the British Council breakfasts have been, about how we continue this international work, bearing in mind the environment. And so we'd love anybody to come. It's not a panel, it's just a discussion. And really to bear that in mind, and Pippa will hopefully be there on Skype as well. And so please do come tomorrow morning at 11 o'clock.
And our Visiting Arts Square Mile project was exactly that, how to bring people across the world together with reducing your carbon footprint. So much to talk about, but I really would like to invite you all now to network and enjoy yourself. People with orange lanyards, could you stay behind to talk to Sinead? And otherwise, don't forget we've got Bucks Fizz at 11 o'clock. Thank you to everybody.